Good day or good evening. Welcome to the 14th episode of Creation, Genesis, and Origins. I'm Dick Fisher. With me is my co-host Ken Miller. In previous episodes, we pointed out commonalities between the Mesopotamian texts and the Genesis narrative. It was Ziusudra, the hero of the flood, who kept the name of mankind alive, according to the Sumerian composition. The name translated means life of prolonged or distant days, according to Y.S. Chin, who authored the recent book, The Primeval Flood Catastrophe. Ziusudra is described as king in the texts and in the Sumerian King List. Although Genesis says Noah lived 950 years, Jewish historian Josephus, who lived during the 1st century A.D., used the word governed rather than lived, which places him in the category of king, and lends further support to our understanding that the names Ziusudra in Sumerian, Utnapishtim in Akkadian, and Noah in Hebrew are all the same man.
We also pointed out previously that a name recorded in the Sumerian language does not dictate that a person was a Sumerian. Even in the Bible, we see names recorded in both Greek and Hebrew. Peter in Hebrew is Cephas in Greek, for one example.
From Genesis, we know there were 8 passengers on board the ark: Noah, 3 sons, and 4 wives. Although the cylinder seal recovered from a wreck depicts 2 Sumerian boatmen manning oars or punting poles, this makes sense. Kings and princes don't man the oars or punt boats, and certainly a queen or a princess is above such things. Josephus records that after the living creatures left the ark, both he and his family went out, when he also sacrificed to God and feasted with his companions. First the family leaves the ark, and then Noah feasted with companions. Who are the companions?
In the legend of Gilgamesh, Puzur-Amuri is named as the boatman aboard the ark. He may have been one of the companions.
Josephus continued, however, the Armenians call this place Abapatarian, the place of descent. For the ark being saved in that place, its remains are shown there by the inhabitants to this day. In recent years, archaeologists, did you catch that? Archaeologists have traipsed up mountains over 10,000 feet in elevation, searching for the landing spot for Noah's Ark. Ice-capped Agridog, translated Painful Mountain in Turkey, now called Mount Ararat by Europeans and Massus by the Armenians, has been inspected repeatedly, while the more promising mountains and foothills farther south largely have been ignored. Both Akkadians and Sumerians identified Shuruppak as the home of the flood hero in the legends of Atrahasis, Gilgamesh, and Ziusudra, in agreement with the Sumerian King List. If Shuruppak is the place where Noah embarked on his voyage, in keeping with the Mesopotamian legends, why not give a measure of credibility to the ark's designated landing site as well? Mount Nasur is mentioned twice in the Gilgamesh epic as the location where the ark landed. It states, upon Mount Nasur the ship grounded. Mount Nasur held the ship that it moved not. Scholars disagree on the exact location of Mount Nasur, but 2 general areas are prominent with 3 potential landing sites. One of these possible locations lies east of the Tigris and south of the lower Zab River in either Iraq or Iran. James Pritchard and E.A. Spicer point specifically toward Mount Pir Omar Gudron in the Kurdish region near Kirkuk, Iraq, a low-lying mountain at the beginning of the Zagros Range.
Other landing sites have been suggested, such as Mount Lubar in Jubilees. The Kardu or Kurdian mountains are named in one Targum, and the Peshitta.
Josephus quoted Nicholas of Damascus in his 96th book. There is a great mountain in Armenia over Minyas called Baris, upon which it is reported that many who fled at the time of the deluge were saved, and that one who was carried in an ark came on shore upon the top of it, and that the remains of the timber were a great while preserved. This might be the man about whom Moses, the legislator of the Jews, wrote, quote unquote.
In his book, The Quest for Noah's Ark, John Warwick Montgomery suggests that Menyas is the same as Meni in Jeremiah 51:27 and Manu in Assyrian. Meni and Manu are the same according to the Seventh-day Adventist Bible commentary, which describes this area east and southeast of Lake Jeremiah, although the exact location of Mount Baris is uncertain.
The home of the Jewish kingdom of Adiabene lay nestled in the highlands of modern-day Kurdish Iraq. Armenia and northern Iran, a province of Parthia at that time, a kingdom that endured for nearly 500 years, from 247 BC to 224 AD. During the time of Christ, Adiabene was ruled by Queen Helena. Her son Izades married the daughter of another local king who had a country bestowed upon him from which he could collect revenues and support his wife. The queen's husband, Monozabus, bequeathed to him a land called Kara, where amomum was grown, an herb known in the ancient world as a cooking ingredient, stimulant, medicine, and even perfume. Local legend held that the Ark of Noah rested in Kara, and that legend persists in Armenia and Southwest Asia.
Josephus, in writing about the royal family at Adiabene, remarked, "But when Monozabus was grown old and saw that he had but a little time to live, he had a mind to come to the sight of his son before he died. So he sent for him and embraced him after the most affectionate manner, and bestowed on him the country called Kara. It was a soil that bare amomum in great plenty. There are also in it the remains of the ark, wherein it is related that Noah escaped the deluge, and where they are still shown to such as are desirous to see them. Amomum is known to grow in the mountains of central Iran."
Hippolytus wrote from Rome in the 2nd century AD. The relics of this ark are shown to this day in the mountains called Ararat, which are situated in the direction of the country of the Adiabene, Iran. In the 3rd century, Julius Africanus wrote a history of the world, Chronographia, in 5 books, from the creation to the year 221 AD. He pointed to Parthia, and when the water abated, the ark settled on the mountains of Ararat, which we know to be in Parthia. But some say that they are in Selenea of Phrygia, and I have seen both places.
Lest we regard his account as a roadmap to the landing site, it should be kept in mind that the entire Zagros range intrudes between Mesopotamia and Parthia. The Parthian Empire, however, had reached its zenith by 224 AD and extended from the Caspian Sea to well beyond the Persian Gulf and as far west as the Euphrates River.
Pointing in another direction, northwest of Nineveh, Berosus named the mountains of the Gordians, or the Kurds, as the landing site. He noted, "It is said there is still some part of this ship in Armenia at the mountain of the Gordians, and that some people carry off pieces of the bitumen, which they take away and use chiefly as amulets for the averting of mischiefs."
The first we hear of the Kurds was from Greek historian Xenophon, who lived from 431 to 350 BC, and encountered Armenians and Kurds in his famous Anabasis, which chronicled his journey from Babylon to the Black Sea. Xenophon seemed to have encountered them on the upper Tigris north of Nineveh.
Writing in 1622, just 11 years after the publication of the King James Bible, Henry Ainsworth sought to clarify the text. The Greek calleth them as the Hebrew Ararat, but in Isaiah 37:38 it translateth Armenia. Also the Chaldee here calleth them mountains of Cardu, which many writers witness to be hills in Armenia.
The Kardu, or Kurdish mountains, may correspond with Jebel Judi in agreement with the Syriac and Arabic traditions, and lie in the southwestern part of Armenia.
During the last half of the first millennium AD, this landing place for the ark was widely accepted among Christians, Jews, and Muslims. Ancient writers called this area Kudi Dag, Mount Judi, Mount Kardu or Quardu, the Gordian or Gordian Mountains, the Cardusian Mountains, the Corcyraean Mountains, and Mountains of the Kurds. Early church historian Eusebius noted that a small part of the ark remained in the Gordian Mountains. According to Ainsworth, Solarius points out a remarkable fact that the Chaldean or Targum version of the Bible, called that of Onkelos, reads Mount Kardu for Ararat, and another Targum or Turgum, called that of Jonathanus, reads by misspelling Kadram Mountains.
Nestorian monks built monasteries around Mount Judi, calling one the Cloister of the Ark, that was destroyed by lightning in 766 AD. A mosque was constructed later on the site.
Gertrude Bell, when she explored the area in 1910, found a stone structure near the summit shaped like a boat. The locals still called it Sefnet Nebi No, the ship of the prophet Noah. Bell reported also that Christians, Jews, Muslims, Sabians, and Yazidis gathered annually to celebrate Noah's sacrifice at the end of his voyage. Also in 1910, University of Pennsylvania's H.V. Hilprecht said Jebel Judi was the correct mountain. It was called Mount Nasur in the time of Assyrian King Ashurbanipal, and earlier designated Mount Nippur by King Sennacherib, who wrote that the villages on it were from days of old. He took a plank from the ark back to Nineveh.
Translations from the prisms of Sennacherib's conquest note he made carvings on the rocks at Nippur. You may remember Sennacherib was the Assyrian king who warred against Hezekiah. These rock carvings were found near Kudi, a memorial stele I caused to be made, and I had them inscribed thereon, the might and power of Assur, my lord, on the summit of Mount Nippur, where I set it up. If Mount Nippur and Mount Nasur are the same as Hilprecht maintained, this cast another vote for the region northwest of Mosul.
The Samaritan Pentateuch places the ark in the Kurdish mountains. Muslim sources also place the ark near Jebel Judi. Arab geographer al-Masudi, writing about 956 AD, wrote that the ark stood on El Judi, a mountain in the country of Mazur, 8 farsangs from the Tigris River. The Quran states the ark eventually came to rest on Mount Judi. Writing in the 10th century AD, Ibn Hakal placed El Judi near the town of Nesbin, modern Nesabin, and he added that Noah built a village at the foot of the mountain. In his history of the Saracens, Ibn al-Amid stated that Byzantine Emperor Heraclius climbed Mount Judi in the 7th century AD to see the site, but did not mention whether or not he was successful. Zachariah ben Muhammad al-Qazwine, a 13th century geographer, stated that wood to construct a monastery was taken from the ark. Jewish writer Benjamin of Tudela lived in the 12th century. He attested that he traveled 2 days to an island in the Tigris on the foot of Mount Ararat, on which the Ark of Noah rested. He further stated that Omar ben al-Khattab removed the ark and made a mosque of it. The ruins of this city, Jazira ben Omar, were at the foot of Kudi Dag, even though the author used the more famous name Mount Ararat.
So although the popular volcanic Akkadian would be well nigh impossible as a landing site, we do have 2 other, possibly 3 other more credible candidates. I rather like Kudi Dag near Cizre in the southeastern Anatolia region of Turkey?
The ark could have been poled or paddled straight up the Euphrates River to a remote location of relative safety. Pir Omar Gudron would have been easier to get to, considering the rising elevation going from south to north in Mesopotamia, but it would have involved navigating from the Euphrates to the Tigris in order to arrive at eastern Iraq or western Iran.
Either of those locations would have afforded the family of 8 exactly what they needed: a remote area far from unfriendly people, a reliable food source, and time to rebuild their numbers.
E.J. Young speaks of handing down the truth, though corrupted by time and retelling. Man would have handed the truth down to his descendants, and after the flood, that truth would have been passed on to those who were not in the line of promise, as well as to those who were in the line of promise. Among unbelievers, we can well understand that the truth would become corrupted with superstition.
Leonard Cottrell adds, "The fact remains that there was a great flood, and it happened in Lower Mesopotamia, in the land of Shinar."
The Sumerian, Akkadian, and Assyrian accounts, as well as the inspired version in Genesis, are conspicuously related. Probably they arose from one source initially and went separate ways with separated groups of people. The parallel versions do not detract from Genesis, they substantiate it. Nevertheless, a large discrepancy exists between the times it took for the ark to travel from launching site to landing site, varying from 1 week in the Mesopotamian epics to over a year described in Genesis.
The distance from Shuruppak to Kudidak is nearly 430 miles and approximately 280 miles as the crow flies to Pir Omar Gudron. A long way to pole a boat in a week toward a rising elevation against the flow of water.
On the other hand, a local flood is not likely to stand around for a year. Flooding events occur normally in the spring in Iraq, with spring rain combined with melting snow from the mountains, and a year could encompass 2 annual floods.
A year-long voyage is feasible, but the Genesis text itself drives a virtual coffin nail in the worldwide flood scenario that conservative Christians have embraced. Genesis 8:11 says, "And the dove came in to him in the evening, and lo, in her mouth was an olive leaf plucked off. So Noah knew that the waters were abated from off the earth."
This is yet another example of where just reading the text closely will eliminate some of the self-inflicted wounds and paradoxes Bible expositors continually find themselves in when they select some verses to take in a literal sense while ignoring other mitigating verses altogether. Had the entire earth been submerged in salt water for over 9 months, plant life would have perished. Yet in the mouth of the dove was not a dead olive branch, but a leaf. Could an olive tree survive over 9 months submerged in seawater? Even if one did, could it sprout leaves in a week? Or is it more sensible to believe that most of the world, including the region near where the ark landed and the leaf was taken, was spared the Genesis flood?
Southern Mesopotamia is not conducive to olives, which had to be imported from mountainous regions. The climate in the south is too hot, and frequent inundations are hostile to olive trees. Olive fruit is recorded in Assyrian and Asher temple offerings during the 3rd millennium BC.
Returning an olive leaf to the ark mandates the survival of live trees immediately following the inundation. Today, villages at the foot of Jebel Muglub, located just a little northeast of Nineveh, are renowned for their olives. Olive trees require elevated, well-drained soil to thrive. In waterlogged soil, they die. Thus, there is important information to be gleaned from what may seem to be trivial information in the Genesis flood chapters. Mention of an olive leaf in Genesis 8:11 supports a local flood, negates a universal flood, and offers further support to the area near Pir Umar-Gedron, east of Kirkuk, Iraq, as a probable landing site.
Can I change my vote?
I don't know which way I would vote myself. The only biblical clue comes from Genesis 11:2 that describes a journey from the east toward Babylon after the flood, and the foothills of the Zagros Mountains in the Kermanshah province of Iran best fits that description. Mount Ararat is almost due north, and Jebel Judi is further west. Practically speaking, Noah's boat could be poled up the Euphrates River toward the present city of Fallujah, then headed east via one or more irrigation canals to the Tigris, then down the Tigris to the lower Zab River near Kirkuk. Then they could head east on that river toward the Zagros Mountains into relative isolation and safety, far removed from any potential hostile settlements, be they Persian or Sumerian or whatever. They needed time and seclusion in order to reconstitute, to rebuild their numbers.
Vineyards also thrive in hilly or mountainous areas shaded a little from direct sunlight. Genesis informs us that the area where Noah landed was suited for growing grapes, and now a very old man, Noah was known to sample the fruit of the vine to excess at times. Genesis 9:20-21 says, "And Noah began to be a husbandman, and he planted a vineyard, and he drank of the wine and was drunken, and he was uncovered within his tent."
This proclivity to imbibe a little even has resonance in the 11th tablet of Gilgamesh. When he encounters the flood hero, Gilgamesh exclaims, "As I look upon thee, Utnapishtim," his name translated means "he who found long life," "thy features are not strange at all, even as I art thou." In other words, you and I look pretty much the same. It could even imply they were both of the same race, in the same line of descent, although there is no way to confirm that. "My heart had regarded thee as resolved to do battle, yet thou liest indolent upon thy back." And in Genesis, Noah was found by his grandson drunk and naked in his tent. What evoked the curse upon Canaan, son of Ham, is unclear from the meager description, although one is free to speculate, but the curse is played out in subsequent history. The Israelites, from the blessed line from Shem, battled the accursed Canaanites into eventual extinction.
Genesis doesn't give us a lot of information about the 350 years between Noah's famous voyage and the dispersion of the tribes. After Noah pronounces a curse upon Canaan, Jubilees continues the story. "And Ham knew that his father had cursed his younger son, and he was displeased that he had cursed his son, and he parted from his father, he and his sons with him, Cush and Mizraim, and Put and Canaan."
The writer of Jubilees goes on to tell us that Ham, Japheth, and Shem built individual cities and named the cities after their respective wives. The three clans remained in their own cities and rebuilt their numbers, Noah residing with Shem's family. Although the table of nations for the families listed in both Genesis and Jubilees is the same, Jubilees also lists all the wives' names, which could possibly be an addition or a deletion on the part of the writer of Genesis, who might have thought it was superfluous information. We, of course, have no way to confirm the accuracy of any of the names, although Jubilees not only list the names of each wife, her pedigree, if I can use that word, is also included. For example, Canaan took Meluleth, his sister, to be his wife, and she bare him a son. And Jared took to himself a wife, and her name was Barakah, the daughter of Ziusudra, a daughter of his father's brother. And Noah took to himself a wife, and her name was Amzara, the daughter of Rachiel, the daughter of his father's brother. Now, there is reason to be wary of the names, as every wife was either a niece or a sister. Nevertheless, each name was just as Hebrew-sounding as the patriarch they married, until we reach the names of Noah's son's 3 wives, listed here, with no lines of descent whatsoever included. And the women, whoever they were, have names the writer had to know were not in any way Hebrew related. The inference is that these women either came from the indigenous population, Sumerian or Ubadan perhaps, or at least the writer of Jubilees thought they did. And that is as close as we can come, given our present state of knowledge and with the available evidence. In our next episode, we will look at the dispersion of Noah's generation in Peleg's day, when Genesis says the earth or land was divided, that is to say, apportioned among the Noachian tribes. A special thanks to my co-host Ken Miller, and we appreciate your spending time with us.